The tennis world had been waiting for his voice. Carlos Alcaraz, the two-time Wimbledon champion and one of the most beloved figures in the sport, had been silent for weeks. But when he finally broke his silence, his words were not about his own injury or his own recovery. They were about someone else entirely. Eala had just walked off center court after the most heartbreaking defeat of her career. The Filipino fans who had packed the stands were in tears. The nation of 110 million people who had stayed up through the night to watch her were reeling. And then Alcaraz spoke. What he said stunned everyone, not because it was controversial, not because it was surprising, but because it came from a place of pure unfiltered admiration. The Spaniard, who had been sidelined by a wrist injury that forced him to withdraw from Wimbledon and the French Open, had been watching Eala's journey closely. I think she is definitely a top player, Alcaraz said. She has that potential to be, top 5, top 10 for sure. The words were not just a compliment, they were a declaration. From one Rafa Nadal Academy graduate to another, from one Grand Slam champion to a rising star who had just proven she belonged on the biggest stage in tennis. What did Alcaraz see in Eala that made him speak out? And why has his message become one of the most talked about moments of Wimbledon 2026? The answer reveals everything about the respect Eala has earned from the sport's greatest players. Carlos Alcaraz had been away from the tennis world for months. A lingering wrist injury had forced him to withdraw from the French Open, where he had been the defending champion. Then came the announcement that stunned the tennis world. He would also miss Wimbledon, the tournament he had won back-to-back in 2023 and 2024. I have to withdraw from the grass court swing at Queen's and Wimbledon, Alcaraz posted on his social media accounts. They are two truly special tournaments for me, and I will miss them a lot. We'll keep working to come back as soon as possible. The tennis world mourned his absence. The two-time Wimbledon champion who had beaten Novak Djokovic in 2 consecutive finals at the All England Club was gone from the draw. The quest for a 3rd consecutive Wimbledon title would have to wait, but Alcaraz was not idle. He was watching, and he was paying particular attention to one player. Eala, seated 29th at Wimbledon, had captured the imagination of the tennis world with her historic run. She had already made history earlier in the year by becoming the first Filipino to reach a WTA final at Eastbourne. She had defeated 3 Grand Slam champions, Jelena Ostapenko, Madison Keys, and Iga Swiatek, to reach the Miami Open semifinals earlier in the season. But at Wimbledon, she had achieved something even more remarkable. She had defeated defending champion Iga Swiatek on center court, becoming the first Filipino to reach the 4th round of a Grand Slam singles tournament. Alcaraz had been watching. And when Eala's run ended with a heartbreaking 4th-round defeat to Jasmine Paolini, he could no longer stay silent. I think she is definitely a top player, Alcaraz said. She has that potential to be, top 5, top 10 for sure. The words were not just a compliment, they were a declaration. From one Rafa Nadal Academy graduate to another. From one Grand Slam champion to a rising star who had just proven she belonged on the biggest stage in tennis. The connection between Carlos Alcaraz and Eala runs deeper than a casual compliment. Both players share something extraordinary. They are graduates of the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca. Eala had been training at the academy since she was 12 years old, leaving her home in the Philippines to pursue her tennis dreams. The academy became her base, the place where she honed her skills and developed the game that would eventually take her to Wimbledon's center court. I had to get out of the country, Eala explained. I was happy at home, but the Philippines tennis scene is not very developed, so I needed the chance to play matches and tournaments against better players in order to get better. At the academy, Eala was surrounded by greatness. Rafael Nadal himself was often present, and Eala had the privilege of hitting with the 22-time Grand Slam champion. It was so special for me. Obviously, training with Rafa is something that people and young kids can only dream about, so it was such a pleasure to share the court with him. He gave me some tips on my forehand and a few other small advice. This is the first time I've ever hit with him in my life, and it's just a memory that will last forever, Eala said. Alcaraz, too, had benefited from the academy's environment. The connection between the two players was not just professional, it was personal. They were part of the same family. In April 2026, Eala and Alcaraz had crossed paths at the Laureus World Sports Awards in Madrid, where Alcaraz was named Sportsman of the Year. Eala, who graced the red carpet in an elegant Filipiniana ensemble, shared the moment with the Spanish star. But perhaps the most telling sign of their mutual respect came earlier in the year, when Eala was asked about her dream mixed doubles partners. Without hesitation, she named Carlos Alcaraz alongside Novak Djokovic and Joao Fonseca. The admiration was mutual. And when Alcaraz spoke out after Eala's Wimbledon exit, it was not just a casual comment. It was a recognition that the next generation of tennis greatness was emerging from the same place where he had developed his own game. The Rafa Nadal Academy had become one of the most successful tennis development programs in the world, and its graduates were now dominating the sport. Carlos Alcaraz was the Academy's most famous product. A 5-time Grand Slam champion, he had already won the Australian Open earlier in 2026 and was on a career-best winning streak before his injury. But he was not the only success story. Alexandra Eala had emerged as one of the Academy's most promising graduates. Despite her lack of major WTA titles, she had grabbed the attention of the tennis world with her fearless play and her huge fan base from the Philippines. The Academy had also produced players like Casper Ruud, a 14-time ATP champion and former world number 2, Martin Landalus, Jaume Munar, and Solana Sierra. It was a conveyor belt of talent that was reshaping the sport. But Eala was special. Her run at Wimbledon had proven that she could compete with the best in the world. She had defeated the defending champion on center court. She had become the first Filipino to reach the 4th round of a Grand Slam. And she had done it with the same fighting spirit that defined the Academy's philosophy. "I think she is definitely a top player," Alcaraz had said. "She has that potential to be, top 5, top 10 for sure." The words were not just a compliment. They were a recognition that Eala had arrived. She was no longer just a promising junior. She was a force on the WTA Tour, a player who had proven she belonged on the biggest stages. The connection between Alcaraz and Eala was a testament to the Academy's success. Both players had been shaped by the same environment. Both had learned from the same coaches. Both had been inspired by the same legend, Rafael Nadal. And now, both were representing the Academy on the biggest stages in tennis. Alcaraz's words of support came at a moment of profound heartbreak for Eala and her fans. The 4th-round match against Jasmine Paolini had been a war of attrition. Eala had fought with everything she had, pushing the 2024 Wimbledon finalist to the absolute limit. But in the end, it was not enough. When the final ball landed, Eala stood at the net, her head bowed. The applause from center court was deafening. The crowd was not applauding a defeat. They were applauding a journey. They were applauding a woman who had given everything. Approximately 8,000 fans had gathered at the Philsports Arena in Pasig to watch the match. The venue was packed. The energy was electric. And despite the defeat, no one was leaving. They had come to witness history, and they had seen it. The images of Eala's victory over Swiatek had already gone viral, capturing the imagination of almost the entire 120 million population of the Philippines. And even in defeat, the nation remained united behind their hero. Then came Alcaraz's message. It was a reminder that Eala's greatness had not gone unnoticed. It was a recognition that the tennis world was watching, and they were impressed. "I think she is definitely a top player," Alcaraz had said. "She has that potential to be, top 5, top 10 for sure." For Eala, the words were more than just a compliment. They were a validation, a confirmation that her journey was not over, a promise that the best was yet to come. The final chapter of this story is not about a tennis match or a ranking point. It is about a message of support that transcended the sport. Carlos Alcaraz had been absent from Wimbledon, sidelined by an injury that had robbed the tournament of one of its biggest stars. But in his silence, he had been watching. And when he finally spoke, his words were not about his own frustration. They were about someone else. Eala had just suffered the most heartbreaking defeat of her career. But Alcaraz's message reminded her that her journey was only beginning. The Filipina sensation had proven that she belonged on the biggest stages. She had earned the respect of the sport's greatest players, and she had inspired a nation of 110 million people. "I think she is definitely a top player," Alcaraz had said. "She has that potential to be, top 5, top 10 for sure." The words were not just a compliment. They were a declaration, from one Rafa Nadal Academy graduate to another. From one Grand Slam champion to a rising star who had just proven she belonged on the biggest stage in tennis. Eala's Wimbledon run had done something that no amount of government funding or marketing could have accomplished. It had united a nation. It had inspired a generation. And it had proven that a young girl from the Philippines could compete with the best in the world. Now, as she prepares for the US Open and the hard court swing, she carries with her the support of a nation and the respect of the sport's greatest players. The Eala effect is not just a marketing term, it is a movement, and it is only just beginning. Was Alcaraz's message just a compliment, or was it the moment tennis recognized its next great star?